Excellent. Good morning and welcome to our webinar. Today's webinar is Getting Over Denial, a Way of Addressing Stuckness in Recovery. Welcome, Doug. Welcome, welcome. We're just getting started. Just getting started. Great to have you here, Doug. Welcome, welcome. As I was thinking, as I'm getting started and thinking about this particular webinar, I'm always energized, inspired, and intrigued by Stacy. And I sing her praises enough for people to appreciate what she does for me in relation to not only helping to coach recovery, but also helping me to understand recovery and what's important in helping not only myself, but others in the recovery process. And that's a preface to just some comments about the fact that, more times than not, Stacy will um, inquire among participants what might be a helpful topic. Last 2 months ago, we looked at, the whole concept of healthy boundary issues. And for me, that really opened up information about intimacy and the core concept of intimacy as we're developing boundaries. And I think there's a spillover when I begin to talk about being stuck in recovery. When I initially, talked with Stacy about this being a topic, I began to think about, okay, how do we help people get unstuck in recovery? But the first part of that focus for me began to be, what is being stuck in recovery mean? And if we're going to address stuckness in recovery, let's begin to think about what does it mean to be stuck in recovery? So with that concept in mind, as we get started, Stacy and Doug, as you enter this particular webinar, how are you thinking about the concept of being stuck in recovery? Well, whether it's related to your own experience or your experience in working with recoveries or other people in a recovery process. What does it mean to be stuck in recovery as we think about addressing being stuck in recovery? As you look at the got Stacy typing. And again, when I do this work and when the topic is introduced, I reach out to as many people as I can and hopefully get some responses back just to begin to think about how other people are thinking about the concept of being stuck in recovery, the concept of helping people to get unstuck in recovery. I think it covers a lot of territory. Stacy says, it's my experience that to be stuck is to be stagnant. Yeah, yeah, to be stuck is to be stagnant, to lack movement. Um, that concept comes up when we think about the stages of recovery that we learned in Recovery Coach Academy. And one of the pieces talked about stagnation. And I'm looking for it right now as I'm getting some typing from Doug. But to be stagnant is to lack movement. We have found that after participant relapses, coming back seems much tougher because head knowledge versus heart passion diminishes. Head knowledge versus heart passion diminishes. Explain that for me, Doug. There's something there I want to see. We have found that after participant relapses, and also in relation to thinking about getting stuck in recovery, my exploration of the topic has uncovered the fact that many times stuckness in recovery leads to relapse. So how do we help that not to get to the place of relapse, which is definitely stuck, is definitely stagnation, and whatever else that means? It seems much tougher because head knowledge versus heart compassion diminishes. Does head knowledge mean the wisdom? Does that mean the information that's necessary to move on? Let's tease this out a little bit. I like the conversation. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, for me, that's where collaborative learning is so critical to our process, folks. We don't know what we don't know, and who gets to know everything, and who would want to know everything. But clearly, I think when we're introduced topics such as this that on the surface seem so simple, but when you really begin to dig into it, aren't as simple as they may be. Stuck in recovery. Change is painful, growth is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere where you don't belong. The information doesn't seem to so exciting anymore for the participant. Thus, they have lost that first love, that first passion. It's not as exciting. So how do we continue that excitement? For me, it really talks about how do we continue that commitment to learning, which are all going to be a part of this process as we move along. Thank you, folks, for that learning up front. Again, a part of the learning up front is that, when you look at the three-legged stool of Recovery Coach Academy, it speaks about the power of actively listening, the power of asking good questions, and the power of managing and discovering our stuff, all while we're treating recoveries and ourselves as resources in the process. So, in thinking about this concept of stuckness and recovery, the questions I want to posit up front, and I've posited all along for the last 3 or 4 weeks as I've been exploring this concept. Because again, many times I think when I talk with people about the stool and asking good questions, people can get stuck relative to being able to ask good questions. Many of the good questions that I ask are part of assessment processes. They're part of just my own curiosity about what might be going on in that person's life. So when we think about this whole concept of addressing stuckness and recovery, the questions that came up for me are, and these are questions that I'm starting to ask earlier in a person's recovery process. Because when we look at stage 4 of the recovery, of the stages of recovery, which is the stage of integration, that's the stage that talks about avoiding stuckness. So if we're going to help people to avoid stuckness, and I firmly believe that proper preparation prevents poor performance. If we're truly going to help people to perform as well as they can in their recovery process, maybe, just maybe, we can talk earlier about avoiding stuckness. We can talk earlier about what stuckness may look like. And again, that's what I'm making an effort to share with you this morning, and I hope it helps because it's helping me to do a better job as I coach recovery, as I coach recoveries. And clearly, as you'll see later on in this presentation, as I think about my own stuckness in recovery after 38 years in recovery, it becomes very helpful to ask these questions and to explore these questions up front versus waiting until the stuckness is about to happen or occurs. So we think about the power of good questions. Some of the questions I'm beginning to ask recoveries much earlier in their process of recovery are, what are the signs and symptoms of a person becoming stuck in recovery? I might ask the question, what might you anticipate will get you stuck in your process of recovery? Another question I'm asking is, what are the dangers and consequences that you believe would come as a result of being stuck in recovery? How do you help yourself towards becoming unstuck in recovery? How do you help yourself, or how do you help a recovery towards becoming unstuck in recovery? And again, maybe it's about preparation. Maybe it's about acting up front versus when it happens. Another question I'm asking is, how does denial contribute to being stuck in recovery? And how might addressing denial help you or recovery overcome being stuck in recovery? The concept of denial was something that I spent a lot of time with early in my recovery process, and you'll see some of what that looked like. And I'm finding I'm uncovering it again to work on some of my stuff as I'm stuck in portions of my own integrated recovery process as it is now. So with that in mind, those questions are really what the objectives of this work are. As participants, you'll be able to identify the signs and symptoms of becoming stuck in recovery. You'll be able to describe the dangers of becoming stuck in recovery. You're going to explore how to become unstuck in a recovery process. We're going to explore something that I developed years ago called getting over denial, which is in many ways my way of addressing stuckness in recovery, both within my own process as well as in my effort to help and support others' processes. Any questions about where we're going in relation to this webinar? Excellent. I'll move along. Any questions, any comments that come up, please type them. I will address them. Anything that comes up for you, for me, this is a learning that's collaborative, and it's about helping us to know what we can know in relation to addressing this issue. What might be some of the warning signs of becoming stuck in recovery as you think about them? What might be some of the warning signs that you've experienced or you've seen or you've heard that people have experienced um, prior to becoming stuck in recovery? What are some of the warning signs of becoming stuck in a process of recovery? I've got Doug and Stacy writing. Excellent. Thank you. Lack of fun. Yes. Fun balances the work. Fun gives me a sense that it's worthwhile. Missing meetings, not completing goals that they've established. Well stated. Living in the place of autopilot. Talk to me about that, Stacy. I got a sense, but living in the place of autopilot. What are we saying there? Living in the place of autopilot. Does that mean I just get up and I move through life and don't pay a whole lot of attention to what's going on? Um, what's autopilot here? Is it cruise control? And as a part of that cruise control, what's happening or what's happened? Yeah, I like that too. I like that too. Okay. Warning signs is an increase in negative thinking. Disappointment with self at whatever level or whatever experience. Pessimism or hopelessness about the future. Anger outbursts and feelings of resentment. When you're living in a place of not being mindful, of not being mindful and present. Yeah, a real lesson I had to learn early on was be here now. Be mindful of where you are and what you're doing and how you're doing it, as well as what the results are. So many times I get in trouble when I misplace priorities. Oh, yes, 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 yes. What's most important? And what makes that so important at this point in time? And is what is making it so important at this point in time masking or denying the importance of something else that needs to be addressed? Well stated. So, warning signs of becoming stuck can also be an increase in negative thinking, disappointment with self, pessimism or hopelessness about the future, anger outbursts and feelings of resentment, problems in living and in relationships, beginning to isolate, not talking about problems or concerns with others. And all of that, I think, addresses what you talked about. My ability to be more aware of where my priorities are being misplaced. My ability to appreciate that I'm not having a lot of fun in this process. My ability to think about that I'm just sort of moving along at autopilot and not being mindful or not being present are things that can come out as a result of talking about my problems and concerns with people that I care, that care about me and are willing to help me. I know in my own becoming stuck in recovery, not talking about problems and concerns with others, especially the others that were most affected by my stuckness, has been very painful and hurtful. What are some of the dangers of our becoming stuck in recovery, as you might think about them and experience them? What are some of the dangers that a person might experience in becoming stuck in recovery? What makes that a difficult prospect to experience? What are the dangers inherent in becoming stuck based upon some of the things that you talked about relative to what that stuckness looks like and how it is experienced? Stacy's typing. I'll start. Decisions that are not in the person's best interest of wellness. Decisions, choices. We're going to talk about that more. For me, that's a clear piece of it. Decisions slash choices that end up not being in the best person's interest in wellness. I like that because it really focuses on what my work has to be well, to be whole, to practice self-care, like getting involved in a relationship to early recovery, back to choices. Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of time on choices. Thank you, folks. Thank you, thank you. You're stimulating me. Some of the danger of becoming stuck in recoveries may prompt a person to become dissatisfied with recovery lifestyle or process and lose hope. Another danger of being stuck in recovery is that avoidance and denial can lead to further pain and suffering. I'm going to talk a lot about denial, which has a lot of avoidance attached to it, and that was one of my clear places of getting stuck. Dangers of being stuck in recovery: the person may respond to stress of being stuck in recovery by turning to new maladaptive behaviors that become an addiction substitute, workaholism, fitness fanatic, or other substance use. Marijuana maintenance being one of those. For some people, cigarette smoking. I mean, just the whole nature of things that aren't necessarily helpful for people that people use to respond to stress. Can't get away from that concept, can we? Concept of stress. So much of my stress is wrapped up in my being stuck or my being non-responsive to what's in front of me, or ignoring or avoiding or denying what's in front of me. And that's a choice, a very dangerous choice if we don't make them well. I always love this diagram. It comes out of my social work practice, my social work school experience with Carol Germain. And what it depicts is that, we have stress. Life has stressors. And then in coping with that stress, it can be either maladaptive and ineffective, which leads to illness and addiction, or coping with stress can be adaptive and effective, which leads to wellness. And that was a concept that you spoke about earlier, Stacy. So if I'm making choices, if I'm developing or practicing strategies to cope with stress, and recovery is stressful. Recovery has stressors and challenges. A challenge is when we believe we have the personal and environmental resources to master what's in front of us in spite of the stress. A stress is when we feel internal responses to a life stressor that exceeds our perceived personal and environmental resources to cope with it. I feel stressed when I don't think I have what I need inside of me, and I don't have the resources outside of me to address it. And I create more stress when I don't take advantage of either one of those. That's when I get stuck in recovery. When I don't take advantage of the external opportunities, the external environmental resources to cope with what's I need to cope with. Very powerful piece for me. Coping is a critical concept in getting unstuck. Again, coping speaks back to what you talked about earlier, Doug, making better choices. Any thoughts or comments before I move on? Or if you do have them, please write them and I'll pay attention to them. Becoming stuck in the relapse process. Becoming stuck in recovery is the first part of that process. Ignoring, avoiding, and denying being stuck. I mean, that's a process that just deepens the anxiety and it deepens the stuckness. It deepens the hole. It just makes the hole happen more quickly. And it's all about our choices and how we choose to behave. I've got Doug typing. As he's typing, I'll move on a little bit more. Becoming stuck in the relapse. That's the one right there. Ignoring, avoiding, denying being stuck, Doug? Yes. That one is the most powerful one that I've experienced. You'll see later on that I've just taken this webinar and applied an issue that I'm dealing with that I perceive has me stuck in my own recovery process. And again, I am thankful for Stacy introducing this topic because it was a topic that I needed to address. And it's helping me to become unstuck, and it's helping me to go back to what I've learned and I'm continuing to learn. Becoming stuck in the relapse process is turning to negative, maladaptive coping strategies to deal with the dis-ease of being stuck. It's not fun to be stuck. It's not where I want to be being stuck. And yet I'm stuck. And in my effort to get unstuck, I may make maladaptive, negative coping strategies that lead to poor choices. Its internal suffering and emotional turmoil is increasing. Internal turmoil becoming difficult to ignore and deny. The individual feels that the life is out of control. Individual may turn, or should be a may, turn to drug use to ease or escape the pain. And not necessarily just drug use. It may be a deepening of the wall that I build around me, or it may just be the busying myself in other areas of my life that I feel more control in, and in the process of that, ignoring what's getting out of control. That's been my process. How we face facing challenges in recovery is a critical part of this discussion. Recovery develops by overcoming stress and problems in living. I'm one who constantly gets up on a soapbox and encourages people to manage their stress. For me, the middle leg of that stool of Recovery Coach Academy, where I discover and manage my stuff, is so much about overcoming and managing my stress and addressing the problems in living that are in front of me. So when you talk about facing the challenges that recovery offer us, I'm helping people to think about overcoming stress and their problems in living. How do you do that? What are the internal and the external resources that can be brought to bear to be able to do this? Facing challenges in recovery is meeting the challenges of living, addresses the stress in living. That's been my experience over time. And yet, it's real clear that in not addressing or meeting just one challenge in living can disrupt the entire recovery process, can help me to become stagnant and stuck in that process. And you'll see what I mean down the road. Meeting the challenges of living is supported by developing a toolbox of coping behaviors and strategies that allows an ability to meet challenges versus stressing. Again, challenges being met mean that I have the internal and the external resources to address and to meet those challenges, and stress occurs when I don't perceive that I have those. Or the stress occurs when I have an ability to engage in help from external resources, and I choose not to do that. And I choose not to do that as a result of false pride. I choose not to do that as a result of guilt and shame and just turning inside and not wanting people to know my vulnerability and people not knowing that I'm not perfect. And that still can be a part of my challenge. Facing challenge and recovery as the toolbox becomes fuller with external, environmental, and personal/internal resources, including recovery capital, individuals achieve increasing serenity and more ease in living. I like this one because when I really utilize what I've learned, when I really utilize the resources that are available to me in my process of recovering, my serenity increases. My serenity decreases, my ease in living decreases as my stuckness increases. And my stuckness continues to increase as a result of my behaviors, which are predicated and fueled by my choices. Any thoughts or questions on the facing the challenges in recovery? Again, it's just an opportunity to look at how this moves along. It's about me practicing and acting, and when I talk about it, I learn, I learn, I do, I live. And it is a process of mindfulness, and it is a process of being present in order to engage in the process of learning. Another one of my favorite diagrams that I think gives us some concept of what coping strategies may look like. It's a piece that speaks about how well you're coping with stress, and I offer it to recoveries to help them to think about the different coping strategies and behaviors that we can engage in or not engage in as we're managing stress. And again, for me, stress has a great potential to get me stuck. When you think about those coping strategies and behaviors, they're personal power, i.e., being confident in my ability to meet any and all challenges. There, I can feel like I am in complete control and I can be very confident, or I can feel helpless, depressed, insecure, doubting, and powerless. That's how I tend to feel when I'm stuck in recovery. That's how it was 30 odd years ago, and that's where it is today. Coping strategy, adaptability, the ability to shift direction and try different ways to meet the challenges of living. Again, that I can either feel flexible, accepting, and committed to learning, the ability to adapt, or I can be rigid, unwilling to change, uncommitted to learning. Those are behaviors that get me stuck in recovery. Balance, situation mastery, the ability to take care of life situations with patience, reasonable expectations, pacing, and setting priorities. Again, to be able and willing to practice care in all areas of living was where I got stuck. I covered a lot of the areas of my living, but one or two particular areas I did not address as well as they could be addressed, and I got stuck. As a result of that, I became disorganized, procrastinating, and inactive. Stacy, inactive for me speaks about that autopilot piece, and it also talks about being stagnant. When I choose and I'm disorganized and I'm procrastinating and I'm inactive, that's a behavior that gets me stuck. So that speaks to my better ability to manage time, to use and occupy my time and organize my life around what I feel as being the stuckness. Compassion for my ability to having compassion for my challenge and my struggle to learn how to live better. Being capable and empathizing with others and seeing their point of view and recognizing their strengths and limitations. But that also applies to me. I remember early in recovery, I kept saying to myself, I now have compassion for my own struggle to learn how to live recovery. And that continues to be a piece of what I need to address today. Sorry for that phone. Sorry for that interruption, folks. Connection becomes a critical coping strategy. Feeling relatedness and unity with myself, others, and larger issues. You know, I'm doing well when I'm motivated and connected to a larger purpose. When I feel alienated, detached, disengaged, and disconnected, that's when I get stuck. I get stuck by dissing the world. I get stuck by dissing my pain. I get stuck by dissing the realities that I don't know what I don't know and I need help to know it better. And the final piece that helps a coping strategy behavior in coping better with stress and recovery is being able to express feelings and share intimately with others. My feelings, behaviors weren't matching. And I wasn't getting any ability to really identify they're not matching as a result of not talking about them. When I started to talk about them, much like what we do in motivational interviewing, I began to make the argument for change. As I began to think about them more clearly relative to what I did to prepare for this particular webinar, I began to get a better sense of the importance of expressing myself and not internalizing my feelings and keeping my feelings hidden. So much of it is about the stuckness is about making choices. The stuckness is about the behaviors that we choose to engage in that are probably more comfortable, but in relation to the pain that I'm experiencing, that comfort level is short-lived. Any thoughts or questions about coping with stress, especially as it relates to this whole concept of being stuck in recovery? If you look at that right-hand column where I'm overwhelmed and strained as a result of the stress, that's my experience of feeling stuck. And I've had other people experiencing that same piece of feeling stuck. How do we become unstuck in recovery? We commit to learning and understanding the signs and symptoms of being stuck in recovery and relapse. And again, folks, I am committing to helping people that I work with to learn this much sooner than I have in the past. Again, I think it's about helping people to better manage the stress and the challenges of living recovery that are bound to come up. But the ability to be more focused on what might be some of the pitfalls or the stuckness areas, I think is a valuable resource to help people to commit to learning and understanding. Identifying what it is that's holding you back by having conversations that matter with a recovery helper. It might be a recovery coach. It might be someone in your 12-step fellowship. It might be a good friend. It might be your spouse. For me, much of my conversations that matter with my spouse because it mattered to her because my stuckness in recovery was clearly affecting her peace of mind, her serenity, and her faith in my process. Becoming unstuck in recovery is identifying and connecting with your support network for wisdom and inspiration. It's committed to learning how to ignite motivation and action, moving away from the stagnation, moving away from the stuckness, moving away from the hiding are all parts of the behaviors that need to be addressed. And becoming stuck in recovery involves participating actively in recovery fellowships, participating in a healing forest. Any other thoughts about becoming unstuck in recovery? Any questions about any of these bullets about becoming unstuck in recovery? Because we're making a transition now. We're moving from looking at what it means, what it might mean to be stuck in recovery, some of the behaviors and the attitudes and the feelings and the choices to a concept of becoming unstuck in recovery. Get unstuck, come alive. That's how I felt. For me, it was such a desperate stagnation. It was such a desperate feeling of stuckness. And again, folks, it wasn't that I wasn't doing what I needed to do, but in a couple of areas of my life, I felt stuck. I felt defeated. I felt powerless. I felt in many ways disconnected from my own self because there was a piece of myself that I was denying. And you'll see that piece. So what does this mean for me? Years ago, I developed this piece as I was looking at my own concept of denial, and acceptance is getting over denial. Richard Bach, who's one of my favorite authors, says, not being known doesn't stop the truth from being true. The truth is you don't know what you don't know. And the ability for solutions to help recovery is that I have to get over denial. And acceptance is getting over denial. For me, I can is a design for change. I developed this about, maybe 15 years ago. And again, it was at a time when I was really trying to help myself and others to truly appreciate the power of denial in the process. But more importantly, overcoming denial through acceptance. And that's Serenity Prayer stuff, folks. If you've been around me long enough, you know I enjoy Illusions by Richard Bach. I've read the book at least 25 times. Here's a page from the book that demonstrates you teach best what you most need to learn. For me, back in 2004, I needed to learn about love. So I teach about love. Prior to 2004, I needed to learn about alcoholism and spirituality and responsibility and patience. These are notes that I took as I was reading through Illusions. 3/19/2017, when I made this slide, I appreciated that I needed to overcome my being stuck with regards to managing my family finances. I most need to learn and live acceptance, which is getting over denial. And I'll give you a clear picture of what that is. This is a piece of my own self-disclosure to help you to think about my own way of thinking about helping people to getting unstuck in their recovery process. So again, it's about getting over denial. It's about teaching best what I most need to learn. And again, that's why I sing the praises of Stacy. She reignited this thinking in my head, and I think it's helping me to overcome and learn what I need to learn by teaching this particular webinar. And believe me, folks, it's been helpful. Circle of life. I like this. In the middle of that where it says stuck in recovery, that it's really, the symbol is self-care. And I've always liked this circle because it demonstrates the holistic nature, the primary and secondary focus of recovering, meaning we have to address all these areas in living. And I spend a lot of time focusing on stress mastery. And I spent a lot of time on a lot of the other areas, but my finances and my work were things that I didn't pay as much attention to through organization, organizing it, asking for help when I needed it, and appreciating there were things that I didn't know, and I wasn't asking for help around. So as a result of that, 319, I'm stuck. You talked, Doug, about choices, and this piece came to mind for me. This was what I developed back in 1994. I did a piece with adolescents and young adults, and I called it DART by Art. And DART then was the Drug and Alcohol Resource Team. And one of the things I tried to help people to appreciate to this diagram was balancing choices. Whenever I find myself balancing choices, and you see that at the top, there's an overlap between humility and humiliation. That's me. I have come to find that I have to be humiliated many times before I'm willing or able to receive the gift of humility. If you look at balancing choices, the unhelpful choices can be denial, ego, dishonesty, ignorance, and narrow mindedness. Those are choices. Choices that I can make to get beyond if I choose to. And the ability to choose to get beyond them are the healthy choices: acceptance, surrender to help, getting honest about what's really going on, awareness. That gets back to what you talked about earlier, Stacy: mindfulness, precious present stuff, and having an open mind. If I continue balance having the choices that are on the humiliation side, I'm in prison, I'm addicted. Evil is backward, is live spelled backward. And that's full of fear. The ability for me to move from fear to faith is me to practice a process of moving towards freedom, a process of recovery, a process of living, which is to live and lead my life. Balancing choices has always been a significant part of my recovery process. And this diagram developed in 1994, which was 20 years into that process for me. Actually, it was 16 years into that process for me, has always been one that I've used to help others and to think about this. Any questions or thoughts about this image? Again, this is an image that I pulled back to begin to address what's going on in this point in time relative to me being stuck. For me, acceptance is to know from within the self that all is well, even when you do not see or understand how it will turn out. This comes from The Spirit of a Man by Iyanla Vanzant. To accept life as it unfolds and enjoy the freedom and serenity of letting go. This comes from In God's Care, Daily Meditations on Spirituality and Recovery. What is acceptance to you? What is acceptance to you? Anybody want to give me an awareness of when you think about acceptance, what is acceptance to you? And how do other people describe acceptance to you? And what part does acceptance play in a process of recovering? And what part does acceptance play in getting stuck? Now, I've described coming to the place of I am and it is. Wow. Wow. I like that, Stacy. I like that. Acceptance is coming to the place of I am and it is. Yeah. It is acceptance. Denial is I want it to be, or it could be, or it should be. I like that. I've got Doug typing. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. That everything that happens in my life is because that God has allowed it to happen. For me personally, this enabled me in letting go. And that's the critical concept for me, Doug: letting go and letting God. God is good orderly direction. God is getting over denial. God is grace overcoming dis-ease. For many, God is a group of drunks. These are all opportunities to practice letting go. Hello, Eddie. I enjoy collaborative learning. Folks, I encourage you to continue to collaborate in your learning, especially as you're working with recoveries. These are concepts and questions that I think will be helpful in helping recoveries before they get to that stage of integration in their recovery process. It's about the ability to really to properly prepare for living life on life's terms, properly prepare for the potentials and the possibilities of our getting stuck. Being aware, hello, listening, knowing who you are. Yes, yes, that first activity we did in Recovery Coach Academy. Who am I? And listening and knowing. Being open to the outcome and not attached to the outcome is a part of my acceptance. Thank you, folks. For me, acceptance is being willing to let go of fear and false pride and accept help. Being willing to accept what I cannot change, that to which I am powerless. And for me, powerless meaning I have a personal limitation. Being willing to get over denial, which means don't even notice I am limited. Or being willing to get over denial, meaning don't even notice I am lying. But most critical for my letting go process has been letting help. Letting help. Letting go of ego, letting go of false pride, letting go of the need to be in control, letting go of my fear of what I'm going to look like, and let help. But first, you got to ask for help. This is that same diagram, and it demonstrates me being stuck. I'm stuck on that left-hand side that's produced by the humiliation. I'm stuck, and I need help. I begin to get unstuck when I let help. Again, I need to make better choices. It goes back to what you said very much earlier, Doug, and I keep focusing there because you got me, man. It's about making better choices. The choice to accept, to surrender, to be honest, to practice awareness, to be open-minded, to be mindful, to strive towards freedom, to practice a recovery process, to lead my life versus just autopilot. Practicing faith versus fear. Faith in a process. Faith that other people will help me if I ask for help. Thank you, folks. So for me, solutions help me get recovery and get over denial. Thinking about denial. Denial is a problem that tells us we don't have a problem. It distorts our awareness of the way that things really are. It affects the way we think, feel, believe, and relate. Denial affects our thinking in very specific ways. We lie to ourselves through self-deception and blame. Self-deception has us believe things are false and unreal. Blame insists that we find fault with people, places, and things. We accuse people, places, and things outside of ourselves for our problems in living. That's denial for me. That's how I've looked at denial for the last 20-odd years or so. And revisiting that, I am so open now to the awareness that my stuckness was based in my denial, lying to myself, and those lies affecting all of what I am, what I believe, what I think, what I feel, and how I related to other people, especially the people who had the ability to help me. Ways of denial are refusing to face reality or the facts, minimizing the reality of the facts, avoiding reality, sleeping, working, distracting. I did a lot of distracting. I worked hard. I worked well. And yet there was this piece that wasn't working well that I did not work on. Blaming someone or someone else for the problem. Believing we can control the problem. Whoa. Not letting go. Holding on to control. Rationalizing, making excuses, reasons for the problem. And exaggerating someone else's behavior to make our own behavior seem normal or acceptable. Did most of those. Clearly. Believing I could control the uncontrollable. Not letting go and letting help. Just sunk it deeper and deeper into stuckness. I like this diagram. When you think about the possibility of all our knowledge, there are things we don't realize we don't know. That's a big piece of the pie. The things that we realize we don't know, that's a red piece of the pie. And the things we realize we do know is a green sliver of the pie. Denial is a problem that tells us we don't have a problem. Denial affects the way we think, feel, believe, and relate. Denial distorts our awareness of the way things really are. And denial affects every area of our life. I was living in denial as I was stuck in my recovery process. And again, folks, I didn't fall off the cliff. I had the ability to continue to do things that I could do well enough, but it wasn't enough, as evidenced by the fact that I got stuck. Building a wall of denial. Denial creates a way of thinking, believing, and living that causes us to defend and justify our right to cling to our attachments, addictions, actions, behaviors, and attitudes, even though those attachments, addictions, actions, behaviors, and attitudes may be hurting us or others. The behaviors we must give up are the building blocks of our wall of denial. These behaviors are the habits, routines, and rituals that we have practiced to the point that they have become a way of living. That's what happened for me. The wall of denial building supports are our feelings, which are the foundation of the wall, our beliefs, which are the mortar or the concrete that holds the wall together, and most importantly, our behaviors, which are the bricks. Our feelings, our beliefs, and our behaviors are predicated by our choices, and the choices build the wall. That's the wall. The mortar is the beliefs. The bricks are our behaviors. The foundation are the feelings that we are experiencing as we move through living in life. Here's a wall that I filled in years ago. The mortar or the beliefs were people should act the way I think is right. I'm responsible for making everyone else happy. I must be in control. Threatening situations have to keep me worried. Bad experiences in my childhood still have control of my life. Making mistakes is terrible. People should be condemned for their wrongdoings. My emotions can't be controlled. Wah wah. And a lot of that came to fruition as I was going through this particular stuckness. When you look at the bricks or the behaviors that contribute to building the wall, manipulating, violating, disrespecting, attacking, rejecting, defending, stuffing feelings, obsessing, isolating, disconnecting, avoiding, escaping, blaming, controlling, denying, caretaking, people pleasing, reacting, lying, dishonesty. And the foundation or the feelings for that wall are fear, anger, inadequacy, envy, self-pity, false pride, low self-esteem, loneliness, vulnerability, pain, shame, guilt, depression, anxiety, and I don't care attitude, and confusion. A lot of those came to play more recently, folks. And when I looked at this wall that I did years ago, so much of it has application to the experience of being stuck that I experienced as I began to do this webinar. And again, folks, yeah, yeah, being aware, hello, listening, denial, deadly, empty, needy, ineffective, angry, lost. Yeah, see, Eddie, what you're doing there is I present this blank wall to people and I help them to fill it in. And you're filling in a lot of those feelings right there, deadly, empty, needy, ineffective, angry, and lost. Those are feelings that I didn't put there, but those are feelings that a person can inject in their own wall. Any other thoughts or comments about this wall of denial? Very, 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 very powerful tool, especially since I've reintroduced it. I think this might be a way of helping people before they get to the integration stage 4, helping people to begin to identify the potential that their wall of denial has. I enjoy it, Doug. I mean, again, it's given me some direction, and it also it's one of these pieces that I utilize with recoveries that helps them to think about what they can think about to help themselves. Hope it helps. Please feel free to utilize it. Hope it helps. And again, this was 20 years in the making. Thank you, Eddie. That makes my morning. The fact that this is helping you to see you and how you can help others is exactly the process as I experience it. We learn, we do, we teach. We learn, we live, we lead. And these are the and I'm at this point I'm going back to a lot of the work that I thought I was going to give to other people, and I'm doing it with myself right now. And it's being helpful for me because it's opened my eyes not only to my stuckness and my blocks, but it also gives me an experience on how to help others. And in sharing this information with others, you'll be amazed at what you will learn about them and about you. So I'm glad that this is helpful. To break down the wall, we must discover and manage the feelings, beliefs, and behaviors that support denial. Denial may begin in our thinking and feeling, yet recovery begins with our behavior. If you want to stop getting what you've been getting, you must stop doing what you've been doing. Haven't we heard that before? And that's how we begin to peck away at that wall. by changing our behavior. I'm doing a better job. I am engaged in a process of not only asking for help, but letting help. I'm giving it to experts beyond myself who better able to manage the issues that I had such difficulties in managing. And even though it still feels a little yucky that I've got to depend on other people, it's feeling better that, I'm letting go and the control is turning into care, which is an important piece of this process. And this is just helping you to relate this to what we just talked about. Denial is the first stage of the grieving process. Shock and denial, which is avoidance, confusion, fear, numbness, and blame. That's why I didn't appreciate where I was limited. That's why I appreciate where I was lying. And over time, the stress of grieving the loss, but also the stress of accepting acceptance, where we're exploring options and where a new plan becomes in place, is a movement along the stages of grieving. Grieving process moves from denial to acceptance. For me, getting over denial is moving from denial to acceptance, much like this diagram depicts. Yes, yes, yes. Good orderly direction, getting over denial, grace overcoming dis-ease. Questions, comments, thoughts on anything we've seen today? Was this helpful? For me, what's most important is that I offer you something that you can walk away and work with and work on. I encourage you to work on it for yourselves and work with it with others. And that's where your true learning will occur. That's how we collaborate in our learning. If you don't know what you don't know, how do you find out? Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks so much for your input and for being involved. I appreciate you. Collaboration is always, and we can do a much better job of collaboration. Great. Thank you, Doug. Glad you were here. Appreciate your involvement, folks. This is what energizes me. That's what I'm talking about, Eddie. Fill that toolbox. Listen, folks, have a great day. And I encourage you to teach what you've learned to someone else who you feel it would be helpful for them to know. Thank you so much and enjoy your day. Be well. Thanks, Stacy. I enjoyed it, Stacy. Again, you hit the mark, lady. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.